Hello, this is Chad Matheny, the guy responsible for the abstract expressionist agit-pop music project known as Emperor X. In addition to my musical activities, I'm also an off-and-on STEM educator, an audio engineer, and a lifelong learner in science and philosophy. Today we'll be reading What Makes Music Universal by Kevin Berger from Nautilus magazine, which discusses the lively debate in contemporary musicology about whether some features of music are the same for everyone or culturally mediated, and what that might mean for how we connect with others through music. My friend Robert Burton, a neurologist and author, wanted to share a song with me last year and sent me a link to an NPR Tiny Desk concert. "It's wonderful to see truly new and inspiring music," he wrote. I clicked open the link to a band who appeared to have journeyed from a village in the Ural Mountains to busk for tourists in the city square. 3 women wore long white wedding dresses, thick strands of bead necklaces, and Cossack hats that towered from their heads like minarets of black wool. They played, respectively, a cello, djembe drum, and floor tom drum. They were joined by an accordion player who could pass for a bearded hipster from Brooklyn. The accordionist was the first to sing. A bray of syllables erupted from him like an exorcism. A steady drum beat followed, and then the women commanded their singing. Their vocals ranged from yodels to yips, whoops to whispers. At first, turbulence reigned, as if the women were singing different songs to each other. But soon, their voices blended into a melody that curled like a river. Their harmonies resonated, as if emanating from a deep hollow, and the melody rushed on. The song ended in a crescendo of wild abandon. The song was called Shozipodupa by the band Daka Braka, which means give, take in their native Ukraine. Bob Boylan, who created the Tiny Desk concerts, wrote Daka Braka sounds nothing like I've ever heard, with strands of everything I've ever heard. That's a nice line, and I agree. I didn't understand a single word of Shozipodupa. The vocal styles were otherworldly, and I related to every note. The other 2 songs in the Tiny Desk concert were just as thrilling. The comments I sampled on YouTube, where the video has been viewed more than 2.5 million times, expressed a similar enthusiasm. "This is gold," wrote one commenter. "Music is the universal language of all cultures." Daka Braka is the perfect band to make the view ring true that people around the world speak the same musical language. It steeps its songs in traditional Ukrainian folk music, but spices them with ingredients from around the world, such as raga drones from India, metrical drumming from Japan, and languid blues from America. Daka Braka calls its music ethno-chaos, but what makes it captivating is not the chaos, but the way the global sounds amplify the Ukrainian ones. The quartet has released 6 albums and played concerts across the globe since 2007. Everywhere Daka Braka has played, fans have rhapsodized about the joy and pathos in their music. Humans have bodies that want to dance, sorrows that want company. It was a wonderful coincidence to learn about Daka Braka while I was immersed in the scientific debate about the universality of music. More than 100 years ago, savvy musicologists were already singing a different tune about the widespread claim that all music could be reduced to pitches and intervals established by universal principles of math, integer ratios to be exact, laid down by Pythagoras. The maverick thinkers showed that musicologists who boosted the theory that musical scales hewed to the ancient Greeks' math were tone-deaf to music and instruments, like a Javanese gamelan heard outside the concert halls of Europe. Mozart wasn't the lodestar of the musical universe. In the past 2 years, the debate over whether music is universal, or even whether that debate has merit, has raged like a battle of the bands among scientists. The stage has expanded from musicology to evolutionary biology to cultural anthropology. The academic discord gives way to a symphony of insights into the meaning of music in our lives. It may be a cliché to say music is the sound of our shared humanity, but it feels transcendent to be in tune with a person from another culture. There's something alchemical about knowing we share the same biology, originate from the same place, share the same desires. A 2019 paper in Science, Universality and Diversity in Human Song, got me thinking anew. The paper concludes, music is, in fact, universal. The conclusion is based on an impressive computational analysis of 2 cross-cultural data sets, one of recordings drawn from 86 societies, the other of ethnographers' notes about musical behaviors from 60 societies around the world. The authors assert music is the product of underlying psychological faculties, sparked by the basics of living. they write that 4 song types are heard in every society: love songs, lullabies, healing songs, dance songs. All cultures are animated by people who fall in love, have babies, seek spiritual health, and, if I may quote Teddy Pendergrass, to get up, get down, get funky. We've shown you don't need to be familiar with a particular culture to understand and enjoy its music, Samuel Marr, lead author on the paper, told me. Marr is a research associate in the Department of Psychology at Harvard, where he is principal investigator at the Music Lab, a psychology laboratory studying music perception and music production. You can find music meaningful and artistically interesting, and even glean reliable information, objective facts, from music made in different cultures. That's really interesting socially, because it shows there's a common ground in this artistic product across cultures. The authors conducted an experiment in which nearly 30,000 Westerners listened on a website to a random generation of songs of the 4 types. The songs originated from places as varied as Micronesia and Western Africa, Southeastern Europe, and Southern South America. At a rate better than chance, listeners correctly identified the song by type. Distinct musical features tipped them off. Listeners had little trouble telling dance songs from lullabies or healing songs given their tempos and beats. But some differences were subtler. Love songs and lullabies, which sometimes may not be easy to tell apart, differed because love songs demonstrated a larger range of accents and pitches. Still, listeners sensed the distinctions. Could elements of a Brahms lullaby, I asked Marr, be heard in a Western African lullaby? We haven't tested Brahms directly, he said, but key features across different world regions reliably predict what makes a lullaby sound like a lullaby. So it wouldn't be surprising if the same features that make a Brahms lullaby soothing are the features that make a lullaby from rural India or Siberia sound soothing. In the paper, Marr and co-authors explain that listeners' abilities to identify unfamiliar songs by type suggests that universal features of human psychology bias people to produce and enjoy songs with certain kinds of rhythmic or melodic patterning that naturally go with certain moods, desires, and themes. Some world music scholars viewed the paper with, well, horror. On social media, and in commentaries solicited by Marr, they proclaimed the paper struck many sour notes, and the sourest of all is the term universal. The idea that there is such a thing as musical universals, let alone that it should be studied, is deeply ethnocentric and Eurocentric, wrote one scholar. I prefer not to approach music in a universal way, wrote another. Every culture perceives facts and music in a different way depending on their cultural background. Patricia Sheehan Campbell, chair of music education at the University of Washington, put the controversy into perspective for me. Campbell is an ethnomusicologist who has studied indigenous music in communities around the world. She is co-editor of the recent book, Global Music Cultures. Campbell excitedly told me about her favorite recent discovery, music made by the Wagogo people in a village in central Tanzania. I was in disbelief when I first heard the recording of it, she said. It was so beautiful. She has traveled to Tanzania 7 times in the past decade to hear and learn about it in person. The intoxicating music, played on percussion, 2-string fiddle, thumb piano, and sometimes a zither, is accompanied by harmonious singing and dancing. To be in that village and be a part of the singing and the dancing, which is so rhythmic and so clear, is an experience that can't completely be rendered into words, Campbell said. Ethnomusicologists often have such powerful personal experiences. They live among the musicians, absorb their ways of life, and become immersed in music with its own cultural traditions. Ethnomusicology is the development of human understanding through music in field settings, not labs, Campbell said. A healing relationship develops when you're working with a family in a small community. You come to know these people and want to protect the nuances of their music, make sure it continues. Putting a universal label on music obscures those nuances. The idea of music as a universal human activity is accepted, Campbell continued, but when we get down to detailing it, we find so much variety in its sonic elements, its social and individual uses. Campbell agreed Marr's 4 song types could be heard in global cultures. But given the song types were derived from sound files and ethnographic notes rather than being heard and studied in person, their value to musicologists was debatable, at least from the perspective of those working humanistically rather than statistically, she said. Marr was familiar with the criticism. All I can say is, there are trade-offs, he said. We're going to lose some of the rich detail by doing quantitative analysis of culture. We'll never be able to match the level of detail that you get when you do rich narrative ethnography. But at the same time, we can make generalizations to all societies in a rigorous fashion that corrects for bias in a way that rich narrative is never going to be able to do. The 4 song types, though, did seem to shrink the canvas of world music. Songs, after all, arose from more social and emotional conditions than loving, dancing, healing, and raising kids. And musical elements that defined one song type could be heard in another type. Also, a healing song might serve as a dance song. Marr explained the 4 song types didn't arise from a computational analysis of the datasets. Rather, he chose the 4 types based on ideas in the psychology and evolutionary biology of music, and looked for them in the datasets. We didn't have enough resources to study more than 4 kinds of music, and those were 4 kinds that were easy to find worldwide, Marr said. I was intrigued by the 4 types and wanted to ask ethnomusicologists, experts in a specific region, if the types defined the songs in their part of the world. I had just the experts in mind. After being enchanted by Daka Braka's music, I read about its history and members. It made perfect sense, given the ethnic signature of their songs, that the 3 women in the band are trained ethnomusicologists. They studied at the University of Kyiv. Nina Garanecka, the cellist and one of the singers, told me she has traveled across Ukraine to find the bearers of ancient, outdated, club folklore and record the material. That material, also collected by other members of the band, in some cases from their relatives, constitute most of Daka Braka's songs. Garanecka focused her studies on wedding music, heard in a culturally distinct area of southwestern Ukraine. I went to a certain village many times, talked to the residents, was at a traditional wedding, studied the dialect, manner of performance, clothes, the wedding ceremony completely, she said. This is a big job that takes a lot of time to immerse in that space, to study the tradition. I asked Garanecka if lullabies, love songs, dance songs, and healing songs were major features of Ukrainian music. Yes, of course, humanity has invented certain rituals that are associated with the seasons, so in all cultures there are some similar genres, she said. Everyone gets married, everyone is born, everyone dies and has ritual church songs. Our favorite category is the songs of the calendar cycle, namely Vesnyanki, about spring, Kupala songs, mermaid songs, harvest songs, carols, Christmas carols, and of course wedding songs. They have the necessary rhythmic pulsation, which combines well with the rhythm of the drums, so it is easier to work from them. I told the band members that even though I didn't understand the lyrics to Shoze Poddupa, the song was a joy. What was it actually about? In one magical place, a spring flows from under the root of an oak tree, and for some reason, the horse does not drink water, Halanevich said. So Ivan starts beating him, and the horse answers him, "Don't beat me, I am still being useful to you." I had to smile. When you added the lyrics, Shoze Poddupa was not exactly the universal language of all cultures. Did Garanecka think there was a universal quality in Ukrainian music? It so happened that mostly all Ukrainian songs have a sad character, she said. These are lyrical, everyday songs about love and hard fate. People liked to sit and get sad. I was beginning to question whether the conviction that music is universal was valuable. What seemed universal was not that music draws out a shared humanity, but that humans project their own meanings on it. We all share a happy delusion about oneness. In a recent interview, Sona Jobarte, a musician and composer from Gambia in West Africa, a virtuoso on the kora, a multi-stringed lute with a gourd body, explained her music did not mean the same to all listeners. To the Mande people of Western Africa, she said, her music evoked that sense of belonging, pride, identity, all that swell in you that just makes you feel so proud of where you come from when you hear it. That's different to other people who listen to it and just feel, it's amazing, it touches me, it makes me cry, whatever it is. I don't like absolutists saying music is all universal or it's all culturally relative, says Patrick Savage, an ethnomusicologist, who is a leading scholar in what makes music universal. I think about it as a continuum. It's perfectly fine to recognize that, say, 70% of the things that we see in music of a given culture are shared with most other musics around the world, and another 30% is distinct to that culture. The fact that people like me spend years or lifetimes getting to understand a specific style of music and its nuances doesn't mean we can't use music to connect with people from other cultures, other places, even if we don't understand everything about it. I see music as a tool for good, for connecting people, even if it's not 100% universal. Savage has studied Japanese folk music, notably the style known as minyo. He is a proficient musician and sang a minyo song for me during our interview. Traditionally, the song was sung by farmers as they led their cows across fields. If I didn't know Savage was a Westerner, born in Wisconsin, I would have thought the singer behind the quavering vocals was Japanese. In his professional life, Savage is an associate professor in the Faculty of Environment and Information Studies at Keio University in Japan, where he runs the Comp Music Lab, applying computer science to musicology. In a 2015 paper in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, Savage and colleagues analyzed a dataset of 304 global music recordings and isolated 32 specific musical features. The recordings included Western and non-Western music in manifold styles from 9 global regions. Savage computed the musical features from various domains: pitch, rhythm, phrasing, instrumentation, performance, style, social context. He ranked the features by how consistently they appeared in music of all 9 regions. 18 of the features were shared relatively widely. I asked Savage to listen to Shozipodupa by Daka Braka to see where it fell on his universal scale. He said it contained 15 of the most universal features, such as 2-beat subdivisions, which was the number 1 most common feature, chest voice, discrete pitches, motivic patterns, and group performance. Savage was intrigued by the song's yodel-like leaps, which he said were rare in most other musics. Another strikingly non-universal feature, he said, is the rare use of dissonant homophony, harmonizing in narrowing intervals, which is historically something that Western classical composers avoid, but here and in other regional styles, such as the Balkans and Papua New Guinea, is common. It's one of the things that makes the recording sound so haunting and beautiful. Savage said the Daka Braka song exemplified a sentence in his 2015 paper and a key theme in his ongoing research. Music evolved, he wrote, to promote group coordination and cohesion, as exemplified by the universal tendency to sing, play percussion instruments, and dance to simple, repetitive music in groups. The idea that music has played a role in social bonding is a passage to the subculture of music research in evolutionary biology that lies beneath the world of notes. If music is truly universal, its creation and effects must be written somewhere in our biology. Music must have bestowed some adaptive trait on our ancestors in the competition of the jungle. Or not. Currently, the song music may sing in human evolution is featured in behavioral and brain sciences. Savage and Marr are center stage. They each, with their respective colleagues, penned separate articles that have attracted 60 responses from a cast of scientists who study music. Savage wrote that music is for social bonding like vision is for seeing. Performing music is a natural act that calls out to be shared. Singing, drumming, and dancing in harmony with others generates positive feelings and mutual accomplishment. As evolutionary biologists have long shown, language draws people together too, as does grooming. But music does it better. It can bind more people across wider areas. Social bonding, gained through music, yields evolutionary dividends that include a larger group of potential allies, increased child-rearing success, increased mating success, and better functioning coalitions, Savage wrote. Drawing on a library of research in music and science, Savage took his thesis directly to the brain. Music, with its combinations of rhythms and pitches, activates mechanisms in the brain's motor system, the neural directors of walking, talking, and, more to the point, dancing. Music sets up mental expectations of the next note, and then meets or upends those expectations to deliver an emotional rush. As our brains groove along to the continuum of anticipation and surprise, they stir chemicals that spark rewarding feelings of sociality, the same chemicals behind love. There's a world of evidence that when people move in synchrony, they are more willing to help each other, to cooperate, Savage said to me. Having assimilated a lot of the same research, Marr doesn't buy the theory that music evolved for social bonding. Evolution doesn't really care how bonded you are with your partners, he told me. Evolution cares about reproductive success, and you can have reproductive success in the absence of social bonding. We tested that in the texts of anthropologists and ethnomusicologists writing about musical behavior. Do keywords associated with social bonding and group cohesion turn up reliably with music? And the answer was, not so much. In his Behavioral and Brain Sciences paper, Marr stated, music evolved as a credible signal in at least 2 contexts: territorial calls and infant care. In mammals, loud auditory signals are frequently antagonistic, and territorial advertisements are a prime example, Marr wrote. Territorial calls signal an area is occupied. Music, notably loud singing and drumming, was a means for groups to credibly show off their qualities to other groups. Music also served parents well. Human parents increased their offspring's fitness by attending to them and protecting them from harm, Marr wrote. But parents are busy, and attention is a limited resource. So to signal their care and attention, particularly when they had more than one child and had to focus on the youngest, our ancestral parents sang to their kids. The features of music, consistent with credible singing, Marr concluded, give rise to a universal human psychology of music. Scholars' responses to Savage's and Marr's theses varied, some in support, some not. For instance, Steven Pinker, a professor of psychology at Harvard, author of How the Mind Works and other popular books about cognitive science, wasn't sold on either thesis. But he's not sold that music meets any of the criteria of a Darwinian adaptation, like language or stereo vision. He has called music auditory cheesecake, a satisfying dessert, but not a nutritious meal needed for survival. He praised Marr for performing masterful necropsies on the bond the group and woo the ladies hypotheses, but stopped short of endorsing his signal thesis. If territorial and infant signaling were the most robust explanations for the evolution of music, we should see signs that those two functions are particularly robust, universal, archetypal, pervasive, and salient in the panoply of musical experience, Pinker wrote. But that is exactly what was not found in Marr's mammoth cross-cultural study. Reading the many responses to Savage's and Marr's papers is an education in how scientists fill in the blanks of one another's research to produce an amazing, comprehensive body of work without arriving at a conclusion. The universality of music is wired into our biology. How could we deny it? But why? And genetically, where? Ani Patel, a professor of psychology at Tufts University, author of the 2008 book Music, Language, and the Brain, and numerous papers on the evolution of music, is a respected scholar in the field. Both Savage and Marr reference his work in their studies. Patel told me he has favored the social bonding theory for music in his past work, but wasn't ready to stake his claim on it. When you surveyed the fields of science for how and why music evolved, he said, I don't think there's overwhelming evidence for any single hypothesis, and I don't think that many of them are mutually exclusive. What excites Patel and guides his current research is that music, which comes naturally to humans, is not something we share with other primates. That fact, he said, is a clue that something has changed in our brains relative to other primates. He added, the most interesting thing about us as a species is that we literally mixed biology and culture in our brain. We have an innate predisposition for music, there's no question about that. But learning plays a huge role. If there has been a gene-culture coevolution for musicality, the larger message for the sciences is that the interplay of biology and culture has shaped important aspects of the human mind. If you want to wax philosophical, the idea that we have evolved to be musical suggests that the arts are baked into human nature. Intuitively, it sure seems music is inherent in our nature, but my research brought me an insight that felt like a revelation. Patel spoke about musicality. Savage also used the term in his Behavioral and Brain Sciences paper. Musicality encompasses the underlying biological capacities that allow us to perceive and produce music. Music itself is what blossoms out of our biology into 1,000 sounds, shaped and colored by the world's individual cultures. The debate over the universality of music can get too focused on what people have in common. Music around the world may share psychological and structural elements, but those commonalities are overtures to how diverse music can be. Our underlying musicality, you might say, allows us to appreciate music's individuality. Ultimately, the most human thing about music is it underscores how different people can be and still feel connected. Maybe that's why art is baked into our nature. I wanted to ask the artist. One of the most remarkable musicians who bridges cultures is Argentinian composer Osvaldo Golijov. Nearly all of his acclaimed works are steeped in the tango of his native land. But that's just a starting point for music that expresses the world in countries of notes. Like the members of Daka Braka, Golijov told me how satisfying it was to experience concert audiences around the world being swept into his music. Rhythm was the thing. Before music is emotion, it's motion, he said. I think all universal musics have rhythm. The attempt to negate rhythm just doesn't resonate with our biology. Our blood circulates. We have two legs, and we walk. We breathe in and out. We have a heartbeat. Golyev asked me about my research. I told him about the 4 basic song types that had come out of Mar's study. Oh yes, of course, he said. Love and healing and dance very much shaped his music. He was particularly intrigued by the 4th type, lullabies. He thought about it for a moment, and then said that composing was like the first lullaby. A lullaby didn't start as notes, Golyev said. It didn't start from a mother saying, okay, I'm going to go do, re, mi. The mother starts humming, and at some point that becomes a tune. The impulse to calm or love her baby becomes a note, a line, and evolves into whatever she repeats. We like repetition. We like to hear the same story every night. My music is the same. What do I want to say? Do I want to calm a baby? Okay, I will start there. And yes, at some point I will arrive at precision, the precision of gesture, of speech, of rhythm, of color. So that original gesture that didn't even have notes at the beginning becomes pure music. The origin doesn't matter anymore. Thanks for spending time with me to consider the universality of music. You can follow me on Instagram and all of the social networks under the same handle, @EmperorX. You can find my YouTube channel that explores everything from audio technology to political philosophy under the handle @CRMatheny. You can find blog posts, tour dates, and more at crmatheny.net. And you can of course stream my music on all the usual music outlets by typing EmperorX in the search bar, or by visiting emperorx.bandcamp.com.